Howdy, all of you delicious people. I am here today to review I Saw the TV Glow. So, regardless of whatever I have to say about this film, that pink opaque show, though, I'm like, that needs to exist. I need to see that show. I need to watch it and realize it's streaming somewhere and just be like, oh my god, I need to see whatever this is. Like, and that's not really just from, like, mocking or copying what the people were to go on and say that they really all liked this show. Like, no. Like, I also would say that, like, the concept and, like, execution of what is to be presented in this movie about this show was actually really fascinating. So, speaking of the show within the movie, and then we'll actually get to the movie part. So, we have these two girls, and they're to be connected via this summer camp, but eventually they split off from the summer camp, and so we're gonna have eventually, like, art imitating life here, and we'll get to that. But so we have these two characters that meet in this summer camp and realize that they are to have this psychic bond, bizarrely. I don't know why, but they have it. And so this psychic bond in my brain is to go on and trigger the ability to see the evil within the world. And that all of a sudden evil is to be Mr. Melancholy, who is to be this Midnight Realm, Man in the Moon. Like, once they said Man in the Moon, I was like, what is this? Like Rita Repulsa from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? Is this villain gonna eventually have a headache? I'm like, how this eventually kind of plays out, like, sounds like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but then again, like, we don't have, like, uh the two girl characters get into, like, spandex suits and start kicking and punching and whatever. At some point there's an axe involved, but we'll get there when eventually we get there, within the little quick cuts that these shows go into. So we have also the possible journey of Owen and Matty, these two characters. And the further and further we get into this, we also have to possibly draw a lot of conclusions. That one, they could have taken every bit from this show and legitimately got it from somewhere else and just had this weird connectional delusion about ever seeing a show, really. But then also, we have our two characters that at some point in this movie are to also probably become way too addicted of one show, that the lines between show and their lives start to blur. And that I also kind of thought was fascinating. But then eventually you just have our characters at some point just kind of break down because they're to lose their flippin' minds. And that's where the movie really just, like, I was like, really? Like, that's where we're going? Like, we're not gonna eventually get, like, rewarded from seeing this, like, half-baked show and this story where it's, like, interesting enough of this kid that goes on to consistently sleep over at this older girl's house to just be able to see this show and then go on and have the two of them just become fast friends, and then have them become too addicted to the show to where they are to see themselves within these characters, and eventually realize that these characters would have villains in their own life that really don't go on and really showcase upon this movie a real problem that they are to like be heroes and solve, sadly enough. But so with that said, like yeah, there's so much potential in this movie. Like it was fascinating to me. But then that car crash, you can't look away piece of it though. Just was like, man, like there was something here. There was something here. Man, if you could go on and make this movie a show, I would honestly watch it. But then again, like there would have to be something different about the show and the movie. Uh, because really, if it was the exact same thing being put into a show, then like you're just wasting your time. But so, with that said, my ultimate grading of this movie is a very weak thumbs up, but a thumbs up nonetheless. Like, because like really I was really hooked. I was really hooked in the film. And then the third act was just like I want to rewrite this movie. I really do. But yeah, so a very weak thumbs up, but I would say definitely check out I Saw the TV Glow. Yeah, really there is an app called Zelifonic, Zelivonic. And in all honesty, the way in which that this is presented for that app is to be kind of a kind of a cheap kind of camera coming into a movie theater to record this thing. So you might want to go on and take some time before this legit is to or you might want to wait until this legitimately gets streamed somewhere and then go on to Celophonic and then check it out there because it'll just be better quality. But I would assume that this movie is probably going to go to like Shutter. I don't know, like Netflix or Hulu, but I'm assuming it's probably going to Shutter because of just how it eventually kind of just breaks down. But so with that said, uh, but you can also just check the movie out on Zellophonic regardless, because really I don't know if it'll be in real legit theaters as it's to go on and say on Google. But so let's go on and let's double fire this bad boy up because it's about that time yet again to, of course, go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to get the full out cast list. And like surprising, there was some actually actors that I was fairly familiar with, but then also like there's people like Fred Durst that was in this film. But then also there was two actors that were just to kind of be neighbors. I'm like, oh my god, I remember them from such and such show. I think it was like Pete and Pete or something. But anyways, I'm gonna pause here and we'll get out that cast list and we'll hopefully break down this movie a little bit more. All right, so the very beginning of this, we of course have a young Owen who is going through a normal day of school where he is to go into the gym class, and the gym classes have this kind of parachute thing where they are to lift up, and all the kids are to go under, and they're to kind of play this weird, obscure like game. And so Owen is going on throughout his life, and him and his mom are to make their way to this like instrumental kind of it looks like there's just a bunch of instruments that are all going on and like either practicing or playing or something, but then also there is to be Brenda who goes on and is to vote. And so we have Brenda that goes on and takes Owen, her son, into this kind of voting booth. And seemingly afterwards, we have Owen who goes on to talk to Maddie. And Maddie is reading this guide about this show. And we have Owen who had gone on to see the trailer of this show, but he ultimately could not go on and watch said show because it comes on too late at night. So Owen goes on to talk to Maddie, and Maddie's like, well, hey, yeah, I have this guide about the episodes, and you could read every bit of what kind of goes on within the show. But Owen kind of takes the book, and then he just kind of just takes it off to the side as they're to go on and just kind of consistently keep talking here. I'm like, so Owen is to have real interest about the show, but it doesn't seem like he's really interested in this guide, this book. But Owen is to just kind of keep pressing about Maddie about like, well, like, I really like the show, but I really want to go on and figure out how I can watch the show. Yeah, so Maddie goes on and is just like, well, like, maybe there's a way around this. Maybe we can figure out a way for you to see the show because I can go on and I can see the show because my parents don't care about how late I stay up. And you want to watch the show, so, like, we got to figure out some way for you to be able to do so. So, Owen then turns around and is to ask his mother about him being able to spend the night at his friend's house, who ends up being Johnny. Also, Amber Benson ends up playing Johnny Link's mom. And immediately when I saw her, I'm like, oh my god, like I remember her from Buffy. And like it's really cool that she's getting work here. But we really don't see the mother until much later on in the film. But still, like it was just kind of interesting that she was in this. She was in this film. But so Owen and Maddie end up going on to see the show, of course. But Owen goes on to get dropped off by his friend's house, and Owen is to try to pretend that he is to have rang the bell, and he's continuing to just stand by the door. And at some point, Owen's mother does leave, and then Owen sneaks away to Maddie's home. So we come to find that Maddie is to have a friend that is to be a girl present at this time and watch this show. And so after both girls and Owen watch this show, and Maddie's friend goes on to take a cigarette, and Maddie tells Owen, it's like, well, hey, do you want a cigarette? And the kid's like, no. I'm like, well, like, obviously this kid is far too young, but then also like like I'm always of a mind of like, hey, if you have a young kid, it's like don't get him smoking early, but then also don't get him smoking at all because I'm also allergic to it. So like I would never go on and advertise for anybody to do any smoke related things whatsoever, or if I was to have gone on and gotten an acting role, hopefully it's not a smoking one because I would not go on and I would not do it. Simply for that reason. If it came down to the whole thing was just you smoking or not, and it's like, well, that's not going to be me then. But so Owen and Maddie go on to uh to after watching this show, Owen then is to tell Maddie, it's like, well, hey, like, I told my mother that I was gonna be sleeping over at that friend's house, so guess I'm gonna be sleeping here. So Maddie's like, well, that's great and all, but like, you gotta make sure that you kind of leave early tomorrow, or otherwise I'm gonna get my nose broken by my father. So that's kind of setting up here that both Owen and both Maddie have really kind of just scary dads. Like Owen is to have at some point where he is to just kind of be scared when asking his dad anything, or at some point when he does ask his parents, both that are present at the time, about something, Owen's dad shuts it down, and so then Owen is like, "Well, I guess I'm not going to do that then." But so we'll get there. But so Owen and Maddie go on to have Owen kind of make his bed in the in with really just a sleeping bag, and Maddie's to go on and say that her life and uh, the Pink Opaque show are to feel one and the same. They're to feel so real. And then she goes on and she leaves. So we get on to the point of 2 years passing now after this kind of first initial. So 2 years have passed. And we have Owen who is to go on and try, because he's much older, to then try to ask his parents to, like, well, hey, can I stay up later to watch this Pink Opaque show? Because bizarrely, like, we have this show that is to like take place at like 10:30 at night, and it's also to be on like a Saturday, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's to just be running any day of the week. I don't know why, but I don't know. Like, they didn't really ironclad really just narrow down exactly when this show comes on. It seems like it could just be on all the time. Hence why it's having like 5 seasons to it. But so Owen goes and talks to his parents, and they shut down him watching the show because his father, of course, is to be driving the car. And so Frank goes on to just be like, well, like, isn't that a girls' show? And that immediately just shuts everything down. So Frank eventually goes on to be able to see the show by Maddie going on and giving him VHS tapes in this dark room. So we also have that moment where Owen is to also speak to Maddie and is to question what had happened with Maddie and the girl that had been with her while watching that show the very first time. And Maddie is to go on and state that the girl that Maddie was with had said that Maddie had felt her up, but that never really happened. And then all of a sudden, like, Maddie's friend turned around and just became a cheerleader, and having Maddie state that, like, everybody is to be a secret agent to just ruin her life, and that is to also just kind of set up like Maddie's just kind of character to just be like, oh, okay, we're seeing that this girl is just having a horrible life. It seems that everything is just out to get her, or to be against her. So we have Owen, we have Maddie, and so Owen continues to get these tapes consistently. And so at some point, they go on to have certain episodes that they're going on to watch, and certain villains are to show up, like Marco and Polo. And at some point, there's also to be another episode where there is to be this clown, and the girl is kind of running around with this axe. And so, like, the very first episode was to have been the two girls against this ice cream man that was legit like an ice cream coned like villain, which I thought was really kind of cool how they set that up. And eventually like had a pretty decent story and enough to follow, where this kid is to have gone on and really realized that like the ice cream truck is no longer going to run because this is kind of at the tail end of the summer. And so this kid is just like, well, like man, it would just be great if we just had ice cream all the time, or we just had never ending ice cream. And so we have this ice cream character that's in this ice cream vehicle that at some point ends up getting Pink destroyed upon it for whatever reason. I guess to have us say that something happened action wise within this film, but was never really actual shown. So both Owen and Maddie have these moments with these shows. Owen and Maddie are to be sitting there watching one of these episodes, and Maddie is to start crying. No one says nothing, but it's to just keep watching the show, even though Maddie's just crying for whatever reason. Maybe she's to somehow really connect with this one episode. But so we have them go on to watch the pilot episode together. And Maddie is to turn to Owen again, him sleeping over. And Maddie is to draw the ghost upon his neck. And Maddie is to tell Owen, it's like, well, hey, I'm going to go on and I'm going to run away from my home because, like, my home is just, like, I'm having real problems here. Like, I really don't feel like I can really live here anymore. And so I'm going to run away. And Owen is just concerned about this show and seemingly nothing else, to where Owen is just like, well, who am I going to be able to watch this show with? And Maddie's like, well, like that solves it then. Like you and me, like we can run off together. And Owen ends up like kind of nodding to this at first, but then goes on to turn around and talks to his supposed friend's mother. Excuse me. Johnny's mother, who he was to have supposedly have gone on to and done these sleepovers with, and told Johnny's mother the truth. And it's like, well, hey, you need to go on and you need to call my mother and tell her what I've been really doing, which is sleeping over at this other girl's house, so that way I can go on and get in trouble, so that way I won't be able to run away with Maddie, because Owen really is to be tempted to run away with Maddie, because there is no love connection between the two of them, because Maddie is to go on and tell Owen, it's like, well, hey, like, I only like girls, like, I'm not into guys. And Maddie then asks Owen, it's like, well, are you into guys or girls, or like, what are you into? And Owen is like, well, like, I'm into shows, like, I don't think anything else beyond that. And if I go on and if I think about anything else beyond that, like, I just feel that my entire body is to have just been like scooped out from within me, and like I'm just a shell of a man, that like there's no real feelings there. And Owen doesn't quite understand why. But then we would of course have Maddie, who's like, well, hey, you're just like that character in the show. And so here's where the connection starts happening, where Owen and Maddie start to more and more realize that the two of them are to be these two other characters. And here's where the bizarro things start to untwine. So Owen then goes on to find out that Maddie had left her home and had gone on to burn her tube TV outside of her home. And so Owen makes her way to Maddie's house to find this TV burnt and find out that something had happened with her and her father. Possibly Maddie going and probably killing her dad, or doing something. But either way, Maddie is gone missing. So Owen is to be pining away from Maddie, and there even at some point in this movie is to have even Owen start to watch uh, the show over again, the Pink Opaque, and start to realize that the show wasn't as good as what he thought it was, or like the stories weren't to be as dark as he thought it was, and eventually kind of lose interest in the show, sadly enough. But it was supposedly at one point in time his favorite show. But so Owen goes on to kind of move on with his life. He is to get this job at this movie theater. He's to be technically this usher. At some point, it seems that he goes on and opens this door of his manager or his coworker, and come to find that this guy is getting a BJ. And so the coworker ends up talking to Owen. It's like, well, hey, like, for some reason this girl just weirdly likes you. She talks about you all the time. Like, hey, do you want to get with this girl? Maybe we can do a threesome. Who knows? But so weirdly, the Owen kid just doesn't see anything. And the coworker's just like, why don't you just look at me when I'm talking to you, or something just insulting. Or he's just weirded out by this guy, but he doesn't turn around and just fire him, because that also would just be like a lawsuit waiting to happen either way. So maybe to just make this guy so uncomfortable that like he just quits. But so Owen at some point is to lose his sick mother, because his mother is getting ill. And so he's only really left with his father. And at some point also, I think his father does die as well, because eventually just getting this character to eventually grow to a certain age. But so Owen, at some point while going on and going grocery shopping, he bumps into Maddie again, and they go to this bar. And while we're listening to this kind of music that some of it's interesting and then some of it's just kind of there, we have Maddie that is talking to Owen and is to mention that she was to have somehow figured out how to have realized that the two of them, both Maddie and Owen, are really to actually been these two TV characters. And at some point of the season finale, or the series finale of the show, the two main characters had died and somehow become Maddie and Owen. And Maddie had figured a way to get a guy to bury her in this coffin. And while she was kind of struggling within it, she learned how to let go, and at some point be went back to becoming the character that was to be within the show. Maybe from losing her mind, maybe from kind of getting this like ignorance is bliss kind of thing about it. I don't know, but Maddie used to go on and tell Owen this, and so Maddie then wants to turn around and wants Owen to kind of go to this football field and have the two of them get buried together. And Owen is like, no, this just sounds insane. Like, but then again, he's also just like, well, maybe we really are these two characters. Maybe we should go on and just get ourselves buried to recreate the series finale of this show that is to be canceled for whatever reason. And so Owen goes on and needs to rewatch the entire season finale to then realize that Melancholy had gone on to take the one girl named Tara and bury her and poison her with this kind of Luna liquid of sorts, of this Luna juice, and then have Isabel, if the first girl that was actually Maddie was Tara, the other girl left was Isabel, and Isabel goes on to be in the midst of Marco and Polo and be grabbed by them, and they force her with the Luna juice, or the lunar juice, and then Isabel ends up getting poisoned and buried as Mr. Melancholy is to go on and have this whole long-winded speech. So Owen is to go on and go with Maddie to commit to this whole burial thing. But in the last minute, he chickens out and he kind of, I think he like tackles her and then runs away. So Maddie disappears from Owen forever, it seems. And I think here's where we actually get Owen to have rewatched the show and then realize that it's like it's not as good as it was, and like, and Maddie's not there to watch it with them, and so Owen goes on and is to figure out a way, I guess, via him working at this fun center arcade place after the movie theater had shut down. And it seems like this is getting closer and closer to more modern times. Owen goes on to own his family's house, goes on to drive himself to certain locations, and Owen goes on to supposedly have a family of his own, whatever that means. Like, there's never really a showing of him with a girlfriend or wife or kids or maybe a husband. I don't know, because really they didn't play any of that out in this film. And so Owen then turns around and becomes much older and is to be at this fun center where he is to have seemingly this birthday party going on. And he is to have to go on and perform this birthday song with these other coworkers of his at this fun center. And at some point, he is to go on and just have everything stop around him as he is to shout and go into the bathroom and take this box cutter and cut himself open. And he bizarrely just starts to peel apart his chest to then see the static within him. But then we then go back to have our character just kind of putting all these clothes back on, and we just realize that this character is to just be broken. And afterwards, he goes on to turn to all these characters as he has struggled to even be breathing at this point. He's to go on and tell all these characters that he's sorry that he's gone on to outburst the way he did. And I think a lot of the characters are to have gone on and not even understood a word of what this guy is saying as he used to walk by. So by the end of it, that's the way the movie is to really just kind of turn out, where Maddie ends up just kind of disappearing from Owen's life whatsoever, and Owen is to just really just break down at some point, and no one is to really care. So sadly, yeah, that's just the way that this movie breaks down. So with that said, man, this has probably been the quickest review that I've done in such a long time. But then also, really, like, this movie was only an hour and 30 minutes, and so maybe if I went on and I did a lot more either animated films, which would be a lot quicker to do, maybe it kind of depends on what it is, because, like, but it across the Spider Verse, which I still probably have to do at some point. That movie just has a lot of Easter eggs to it. Or if I did like Super Mario Brothers, which again I don't know really how popular that really is. But yeah, so really, uh, there's a bunch of stuff that I also have to state that like I am just really struggling to get videos out because really it's not motivated, but it's just like it's really putting pen to paper, and every single time I have to look at these things that I have to go on and do, I'm just having a struggle. It's really I gotta realize that I really gotta make a real schedule of what all I'm going to do and what all I'm going to put out, and hope to really on that day achieve all those goals and get everything done. And yeah, like more than likely that may be a reason why I've taken so much gaps on the channel, because there was a good chunk of time where I would just be consistently doing videos, and then I left to go on uh, and change my body for the better. But then also when I started to more and more come back, the more I realized like, like should I be coming back as consistently as I have been doing? But anyways, uh, regardless, I'm just gonna get out of here because I realize I'm just ranting. What is the point of all that? So with that said, I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Hopefully, this is gonna mean I'm gonna be continuing to just put out videos regardless. Um, but hopefully, I'm gonna go on and schedule and just start to figure out definitely some better titles to kind of put out as a review, because I realize that like the stuff that I'm putting out is very like wild and out there. But I don't know. I'm just trying to see what eventually will kind of stick around with certain people. Then also I gotta look at like the stuff that also has been successes on the channel and just continue with that. So at some point, we'll figure some things out. But until then, I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.